All right, 15F. Remember, this is the one where maybe it meant to say 2x squared plus 5. Maybe it meant to say 2x squared minus 5. But I look at the answer key, I see two negatives, so I interpret that as a double negative. So I am going to solve this problem as 2x squared plus 3x plus 5 equals 0. Which will give us imaginary solutions, but it'll be good to see how that works with completing the square and the square root method. So, first thing, we want to focus on our x terms. So pull the 2 out, the leading coefficient. So 2 times x squared plus 3 over 2x plus 5 equals 0. And now it's simply formulaic. 2 times x plus half of 3 over 2 is 3 over 4 squared plus 5 minus 3 over 4 squared times 2 equals 0. Okay, so 2 times x plus 3 over 4 squared. Why don't we do this? This will be nice for us. Check it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by 2, which means that 2 is gone. This plus 5 is now plus 5 over 2. Minus 3 squared is 9 over 4 squared. Oops, 4 squared is 16. But I have that times 2, but I'm dividing by 2, so the times 2 divided by 2 cancels out, so that's just 3 over 4 squared. Equals 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So there we go. So x plus 3 over 4 squared, I lost my squared there, plus, if I want this to be the same denominator, I need to multiply by 8 over 8. So 5 times 8 is 40 over what am I doing? 40 over 2 times 8 is 16, common denominator, minus 9 over 16 equals 0. So let's keep going. X plus 3 over, I can't do anything, 3 over 4 squared. Plus, common denominator means I can now combine the numerators. 40 minus 9 is 31 over 16 equals 0. So x plus 3 over 4 squared equals negative 31 over 16, which means x plus 3 over 4 has to equal the square root of 31 over 16. I've taken the negative out by appending the I. So let's rewrite this again. X equals, that should be a plus or minus, x equals plus or minus the square root of 31, 31. I can distribute the square root to that 16, and I can say the square root of 16 is 4, so that becomes over 4. I've split the square root of 31, the square root of 31 over 16, I've split to the square root of 30. This is so terribly written. Hold on. Okay, that is what I did. I split 31 over 16 inside the square root up into the square root of 31 over the square root of 16, and then the square root of 31 over 4, because the square root of 16 is 4. So I have plus or minus that I, and then I need to subtract the 3/4, so minus 3/4. So if I rewrite this in another way, they have a common denominator of 4, negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 31, all of that over 4, all of that with an I at the end. And that should be the same thing we got using the quadratic formula earlier, which was a lot simpler of a process than doing this. But again, it's a good practice for you to go through to remember how to complete the square. Doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be your approach to a problem, and it shouldn't always be, but sometimes it needs to be. And if you check, that is the same answer. Yeah. So there you go. That's not what's on your answer key. Your answer key was interpreted with just -5 instead of +5. So there you go.